Good evening, guys. Today is Monday, and it's April 5th, and this is LNM 2, and we're reviewing for the final exam, as it turns out. So a few words about the final exam. It will be a take-home test, again, just like the midterm. I think it went really well, and the spring semester, I always feel, is a little bit short. So in order not to take a whole day up with just conducting an exam, I think it's better if we just spend all the time reviewing. Furthermore, I also know that quite a lot of the other teachers will try to cram all the stuff in that they haven't covered for the last sort of 2 weeks of the semester. We've actually covered everything we needed to cover in this class, which is very, very good. And I'm going to review all the things that we're going to need for the final exam. Tomorrow, when I'm in the office again, I will send you a short homework assignment. And then the week after, basically, I think that's the one that's going to count. After we met and sort of reviewed, you'll fill that in. And then we've got like some time until I think we finish on the 29th. And so we got some time to sort of mop up things that need to be mopped up, clean up things, and create some sort of opportunities for people to finish everything they need to finish before the semester ends. So far, we're doing very well. As I said, we covered all the things we need to cover. Today, I'm going to go through in all the details what we need for the final exam. And I'm going to do it the following way. I am basically going to identify the two types of tonic chords first that we're going to be using. So let's, for the sake of it, pick a key, the key of F. If you review the lesson from this morning, you will have a different key. I can't remember which key I was in, but you will definitely, it was definitely not F major. So if you, it was definitely a sharp key. I can't remember, maybe D major or G major or something like that. So you'll now have a flat key as well to review from if you're reviewing the class this morning. But I don't think you're going to find that there's going to be much of a, many things that you haven't heard before and many things that you can't handle. So I hope, and we'll see where we stand at the end of the class. So if I'm in the key of F major and I'm trying to find my dominant 7 chord, I'm going to the 5th scale degree and I'm adding a 7 to that chord, and I'm going to do all the inversions. But before we do that, we know that we need 2 types of tonic chords. We need a root position tonic chord, and we need a first inversion tonic chord, because 2 of the dominant 7 chords, one of them absolutely must go to the first inversion tonic chord. That's the what we call Roman numeral 5, and then with the 4-2, with scale degree 4 in the bass. That because scale degree 4 really typically or almost always goes to scale degree 3, you'll end up with scale degree 3 in the bass, and that means a first inversion tonic. And the 5-4-3, which we only introduced last week, and really for this class only if you reviewed the YouTube instructional, because I was really not feeling terribly well after the first day of my vaccine last week. So I opted to just teach the morning class and then say, okay, you guys in the evening can review that class in the morning, which I hope you did. Okay, so the 2 types of tonics, we're going to have a 1, and in the key of F, that's obviously an F major triad. Like that, that will be an F major triad, root, 3rd, and 5th. Now, as it happens, this would also be scale degree 1, scale degree 3, and scale degree 5. But I'm just going to name them, these notes here, in the triad for, it could have been any triad. Do you understand that if I, for instance, if I did a 2 chord, that would be on the 2nd scale degree, that would be this. Then this would be the root still. This would still be the 3rd, and this would still be the 5th within that triad. But obviously, this is scale degree 2 as it relates to F. This is scale degree 4 as it relates to F, and this is scale degree 6 then as it relates to F as scale degree 1. We're not going to be doing that, so I'm going to immediately take that out. And I'm just going to double the note, because in 4 parts, I'm just going to do it really simply in 1 clef because it's easier to read. So if I'm doubling the F here, it would sort of turn out this way. So far, I'm sure that you're completely with me. Now, actually, let me just take it off again, because I think when I go one step further, it may be clearer what is happening here. If I invert this tonic, I call this 1/6. I'll get to that in a moment. I can also call it 1/6/3. I'm taking my root, I'm putting it up here, and then I'm repeating the other 2 notes. So F is the root of this chord. F is also the root of this chord, because F is the only note from which the other notes can be stacked in thirds above that. This is what we call first inversion. The reason why we call this 6/3 is simply because we have a 3rd here. That's this one. And then we have a 6th here. That's this one. Oops. So this is basically a first inversion, and this is a root position chord. That's what that is. We're going to need these 2 tonics. I'm just going to erase this. You can always get it back in review by moving your cursor from the video. These are the 2 only tonics that we're going to be using. So far, I'm sure that I'm not saying anything earth-shattering that you haven't heard before and that you don't understand. Now let's get to the dominant 7 chords. And here I'm going to start with F as scale degree 1. So F is 1, and my dominant 7 chord exists on the 5th scale degree. So I'm going to count 5 steps up in the key of F. That will be F, G, A, B flat, C. Whether that's B flat or B, you'll still end up on C, which is the good news. So you don't really need to know all the details and trimmings of the key signature, although that obviously is an advantage in so many different ways. F, G, A, B, C, B flat. We understand that. So C is my dominant 7 chord. C is scale degree 5. Now, when I harmonize that, I call that Roman numeral 5. I harmonize that with notes out of F major. And then I add, so this is a root, this is the 3rd, this is the 5th, just like before. You can take this off now. Now we know, we understand how we got to that. And now I'm going to add a 7th. That will be 2 steps above 5. And in the key of F major, that will be a B flat. If you don't fancy knowing all the key signatures, etc., 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 you just have to think that the kind of 7th we have, let's say that's our root. Again, this is the root of the chord. I also call it R for root. You can also say that it exists up here, and just think a whole step down from the root of the chord. That would produce my 5/7 chord. If I were to name all the intervals above it, I would say this is a 7. This is 2 less than 7, which is 5. And then again, 2 less than 5 is 3. So if I were to list all the intervals above the base in root position, I would call it a 5-7-5-3 chord. But that's a little elaborate, and we're not going to do that. We're just calling it a 5-7. We're just going to call it a 5-7 chord. But if we were to name it by its full name, that would be it. I'm going to erase this again, like I did before, just not to have the screen cluttered up with too much information. Sometimes too much information is really not such a good thing. Now I'm going to invert this one. I'm going to invert this to first inversion. That means I'm taking my root, putting it up here, and I'm going to color that in again, just so you can see that is still the root of the chord, but it's no longer in the bass. So that means it's not a root position chord, but C is still the root of the chord. And I am now going to add all the other notes. That will be B flat, that will be G, and that will be E. So this one here is still a 5 chord, and it's still a 5-7 chord. But instead of calling it 7, because there is really no interval of a 7th above this bass. Here we have an interval of a 7th up from the bass, and that's why we call it a 5-7 chord. Instead, what we have here of intervals above the bass, we have a 3, that's this one, between E and G. Then we have 2 more than 3, that's 5. And then we have 1 more than 5. You see that? Let me just make these the same size. So you really can see that they must clash, because here is the root of the chord. Here's the 7th. Sorry. It is the 7th, but we just named the intervals above the bass. So this one here is what we call a 6-5 chord. We don't actually very often see the 3. We don't need that really. Just like we don't need the 5 and the 3 here. We just abbreviate that and call the 5-7 chord. This one is a 5-6-5 chord. So far, so good?
Where I tripped up on the last homework was that I think I was confusing intervals with, yeah, it got kind of, scale degree is not necessarily root position.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are a couple of things to keep track of here. It's not called figured root. It's called figured bass. So these are figures or intervals above the bass. That's really important. And these are not scale degrees, because they don't have little hats on them. So that you're absolutely right. There's a lot of different little things to keep track of.
Those aren't carats. They don't have carats.
Right.
Okay.
And that's why they're not scale degrees. They're simply just intervals above the bass, not above the root, and not even above the root of the dominant 7 chord. Only in this case does the 7 actually indicate that there's an interval of a 7th above the bass. So there's a logic to it. We just have to learn how to navigate these different things. But this is where everyone goes in the water. I even do that from time to time. If I'm really tired or if I get confused, I mean, it's not that I don't know it. It's just that because I actually did a lesson on, what was that, Thursday, I think it was, after the symposium, because I've been in the symposium all day. And then I did a little instructional, and for a brief second there, while I was talking and explaining, I sort of got confused, and I made a mistake, and then I had to take the video down again. That was not for this class, actually. I think that was for theory 4, because for this class here, we already had the instructional in place from the day before. That was on Wednesday, right? Remember? But for the theory 4 class, so I know exactly what you're saying, Dana. We can all make mistakes, and we all do make mistakes from time to time. I mean, look, when we have an accident in our car, I mean, hopefully not a serious one, it's not because we don't know how to drive. It's because something happened, and it was not an on purpose, it was an accident. Because we forgot So, and very often it's because we think we know what's going on around us. For instance, you're more likely to have an accident in your own neighborhood because you think you know, and therefore you let your guards down. And but what you don't know is what the other people are up to who are also on the road.
2 minutes away from the home, don't they say it's
Yep.
like 2 minutes? Yeah.
Isn't it true though? Yeah. So for a brief moment, I can't remember but I just made a mistake, and I took down the video because I said, okay, we're going to go through this tomorrow anyway. It was not for this class, so you guys are safe from my mistakes. But we all do make mistakes. Okay, so now I'm going to invert this one more time. I'm going to put the lowest note up here, and I'm going to repeat all the other notes. C is still the root, and that one. It's still a 5 chord, and it still has a 7th in it, because the 7th is the clash between B flat and C. And I'm simply just listing the intervals above the bass. Here's a 3. This one here is 1 more than 3, which is 4. And this one up here is 2 more than 4, which is 6. 6, 4, 3, but in normal speech, we just call it 4, 3. 5, 4, 3 is the second inversion of the dominant 7 chord. Ready? Just want to make sure that everything is covered here. I'm going to do the same thing again because I can invert it yet another time. I can put the G up here, and then I'm going to repeat all the other notes. I apologize for sometimes people complain about, well, you know, if the offsetting of these 2 notes is to the right, that makes it look as if, well, we're not quite sure if the C or the B that has a flat on it. I mean, in the context, it's actually quite clear, because let's say if it was the C that had the flat, that would be the same as that note. The C flat is a B, right? So there will be absolutely no purpose whatsoever to notate these in a way with a C flat. I mean, but we also know that this chord has a B flat in it, so that keeps it straight right there. But just to say that the context will give it away. Sometimes I know that if you're not, not yet fully fledged, you'll find it confusing. But there's another reason for it, and that is, if I notate it like this, it looks very nicely as if it has one stem. If you see it in print, you'll see it very often like this. That was the same again. But you'd see it offset exactly as if these 2 notes share a stem. And that's an even easier way to identify. So that's just a little bit of sort of penmanship or whatever. This one here is still a 5 chord. It's still a C7 chord, but it is on B flat. So this one here would be C7, just straight, C7 on C, right? This one is C7 over E. This is C7 over G, or G in the bass. And this is C7 over B flat. And if I now list all the intervals, I see that here's a 2. And I simply just list them in ascending numerical order. So the smallest interval at the bottom, this one here is a 4. 2 more than, if this is 2, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 more than 4 is 6. So 6, 4, 2 would be the full name for that chord. In actual practice, most often we don't see the 6. So that will be just called 5, 4, 2. 5, 4, 3, 5, 6, 5, and 5, 7. So far, so good? Very good. And they're all C dominant 7 chords, just in different versions. Just to be thorough, I can play them for you. Here's a root position dominant 7 chord, going to a root position tonic. Here is a first inversion, dominant 7 chord going to a tonic. Here is a second inversion, going to, and just to make it fun, I'm going to do a different key. So you can, I mean, they don't sound extraordinary to an ear in any kind of way. We would very, we would understand and recognize these sounds because we've heard them quite a few times. That's all good. So we don't really need to spend a whole lot of time. Actually, in ear training, what you should be doing is to sing through all these different inversions so that you know them by ear. And what you should do in piano, which I'm sure you do, is to take all this to the piano or to the keyboard and just train your fingers, not so, but more your ears really, you know, in recognizing these sounds. Okay, let me translate them to 4 parts. That actually makes it easier, by the way. It's actually more difficult to put it up in 4 parts in one clef because it's very cramped. And I know this very well as a guitarist because guitar music is only notated in 1 clef, sadly. It should actually be notated in 2 clefs. But since we don't have right and left hand, I mean, they're doing the same thing. They're occupied with making the same sound, which is also one of the reasons why the guitar is so fiendishly difficult to play, actually, if you're playing individual notes. If you're playing it like a keyboard instrument, the guitar is, because it's the only other polyphonic instrument, the guitar is actually up there among the very, very most difficult instruments to handle because everything has to be squeezed in under 4 fingers. And for every note you play on the guitar, you're making that sound with 2 hands. Anyway, in terms of notation, this is actually easiest. Let's do the 5-7 chord first. So that would be a C dominant 7. Yeah? So C7, that's the one we're writing up here. And this is how I would like you to do it. And on the exam itself, what you're going to get the bass, you're going to get the function, and you're going to get, obviously, what I want you to resolve this dominant 7 chord to. So you're going to get the tonic, you're going to get the bass, you're going to get the functions. The reason why I'm giving you the bass is that the 5-4-3 chord can go 2 ways. And I want to be specific and get you to understand that when we're using the 5-4-3 chord as what we call a tonic prolongation chord, then I want you to not having to struggle with constructing all the voices, but simply just filling in the 3 upper parts. Okay, that's kind of where we are right now. I think we've covered plenty of ground. You'll see at the end of the lesson, you'll probably see, I understand why we're doing it this way. So with this one here, if let's say you decide, because you can resolve scale degree 5, this is scale degree 5, right? You know that when that's in the bass, that has to go to scale degree 1. If scale degree 5 is in an inner voice, you can leave it alone. Yeah. But scale degree 5 in the bass must resolve, and you can resolve it either to that F here or to that F here. That's up to you. If you decide to put the direction up, that scale degree 5 goes up to 1, then the best thing to do is to find a note in the dominant 7 chord. Let me write it up like this, because I can write it up once and for all, and we understand that it's the same chord all over and over again, just in different inversion. So this is my C dominant 7 chord. We understand that C is already here, right? Which note in the dominant 7 chord definitely goes down? That will be the B flat, because that translates to, in the key of F, actually we can write this up as well, and I encourage you to do this so that you know all the notes and you can see the direction of you. You won't need all the notes, but you can definitely see that there's a half step here, as we've explored in great detail. There's also a half step here. So one of the notes in the scale definitely goes up, and one of the notes in the scale definitely goes down. If you decide to resolve scale degree 5 up, then find a note that will create contrary motion. We've done the, yeah. So contrary motion, the moving, the different, so the architecture of the outer voices is still the most important consideration, both for writing music and also for reading music. The thing you should read first before you sort of determine, is it a B flat or B natural or B sharp or whatever, you know, just look at the direction of the note, because your ear will usually take you to the right note if you just read the right direction. The ear, this is probably, you'll probably have been presented, I would think many of you, a good many of you, would have been presented with the scenario that once you learn to read, your ear will go to pots. The ear is still the most important tool when you're reading. It just is. I mean, it's the most important tool for making music. So if you read the direction first, your ear will usually take you to the right note. That connection has to be really reinforced. And now, okay, so my C is gone, my B flat is gone, I'm going to place a G and an E, and they're going to be in the closest direction that I can find. So if I place the E here, for instance, right, I could do that, and sometimes I will do that later on, but then I can see that I could actually squeeze another chord tone in between these two notes. So I choose to do this. Do you see? And now, so now C, B flat, and G are gone in this chord. I don't need to worry about those anymore, and I only have to worry, I have to be aware of my E. I can place it either here, or I can place it even better up here. That's a better range for the tenor, because that's going to sing with a fuller voice, and later on that becomes a consideration. We might as well learn to write the right way for the tenors. That's the tricky voice to write for. Okay, so now everything just moves. Scale degree 4, we know, goes to 3. Scale degree 2, in this case, goes to 1, and it usually does. This is scale in the key of, see, now we're operating with scale degrees, so now we're relating all these notes back to F. This is scale degree 7, that one up here, oops, 7, and here's scale degree 4. We just have to keep track of where these two half steps are. Scale degree 7 goes to 8, so it goes up by a half step. That will be your resolution to a 5/7 chord in root position, going to a 1 chord in the key of F. If I said this, F minor, all you would have to do is to lower the one that says 3, because that's scale degree 3. For all intent and purposes, for all practical purposes, when we're harmonizing, the only real difference between major and minor is the lowering of the 3rd scale degree in the key. All the other scale degrees very often remain the same in both major and minor, especially when we harmonize, and especially when we harmonize between the dominant 7 chord and the tonic. So if I say that, if I give you the key of F minor, It's going to look like that, lowercase 1, and it's going to be just with a lower third. You'll notice one thing that we've talked about quite a few times before. Now you have all the scale degrees. I hope that's not confusing. You'll see that there's scale degree 1, scale degree 8, which is also 1, right? Same thing. Here's scale degree 1, here's scale degree 8. You will notice that in the key of F, they're the same note as they are in all the keys. You'll notice that we have a root, a root, a root, and a third. You will not be able to get a fifth in this chord. That's why we don't start with this as a model, because it has an irregular resolution. It goes to a complete dominant 7 chord goes to an incomplete tonic. And also, you will notice that scale degree 5 is either resolved up by skip or down by skip, but not the same kind of skip. It's a 5th down and it's a 4th up. That's why I'm filling in the bass for you guys. What we're really studying here is voice leading, meaning how to write out the voices so they can be sung by human voices, right? Basically, that's what we're doing here. We're studying voice leading. And at the same time, we're also learning a little bit about chord inversion. We're learning about range, right? And we're learning how to spell all these chords the right way. Okay, I don't think this is earth-shattering. It's probably straightforward. You'll get a few tries at this before the final exam, and then after that, we'll have some time to clean up whatever. So far, I think, right off the top of my head, I don't think anyone is failing, certainly not in this section here. You know, so that's all good. All righty, that was 5/7 going to 1. Again, in review, you can always view it as many times as you want and stop along the way and view it again, all that. Let's go to the 5/6/5. So first inversion of the dominant 7 chord. This one is now going to be a C7 and it's going to have E in the bass. So I'm going to put my E, let's say here. I could also put it an octave lower, but this is as good as any E really. And then I see, again, I resolve this one up by a half step. Given that this one goes up, I again will place the note that I know is going to create contrary motion between the outer voices. Again, the B flat goes in there and serves as that note that's going to create contrary motion. This is actually a very, very elegant contrary motion because we have the soprano going down by a half step and the bass stepping up by a half step. That sounds really, really good, very balanced. It's a really cool sound that you will probably recognize in choral settings. Very often it sounds really good. So that's a very neat little sort of tool to have in your toolbox. And here, same thing again. Just going to fill in scale degree 2, going to 1. And then what do I not have? So I have E is gone, B flat is gone, G is gone, and I don't have a C. So I'm going to put that in here. And since scale degree 5 now is in an inner voice, I can have a complete tonic chord with a root, a third, a fifth, and another root. So all the inversions of the dominant 7 chord go to a complete tonic chord. And again, if I ask you to do this in a minor mode or in a minor tonic, all you have to do is to lower the chordal third by a half step. Not difficult, but something that we will get used to doing. We'll get used to treating the major and the minor mode in a similar enough way. Why is that? We've decided in this school, because this is the way that gospel and jazz, but particularly gospel actually behaves very, very often, more often than not. We have what we call full modal mixture. We have primary modal mixture and secondary modal mixture, and that is mixed into the way we understand the theory. So there's no reason why that couldn't form the basis. And it's the same basis as you would have for late 19th century concert music. So it sort of knocks out a few steps that I think are just taking up time, basically. As far as I'm concerned, we can go straight to this understanding also because, as you'll see next semester particularly, once you've gotten used to this, you will understand that many of the chords that we use as what we call predominance right before this step here are coming straight out of a sort of jazz and gospel playbook, particularly gospel. And then you'll also see that that same playbook was actually established in church music, quite early on, in the 18th century, if you must know, and particularly by Bach, Bach established a lot of this sort of tonal strata that we still use as our reference for how to understand harmony. So we're simply just learning a tool that can serve in many different functions. So far, so good with this one? Cool. We will move on. And we'll now have the second inversion. So that'll be C7 over G. Remember that again. I'm going to give you the bass. I'm going to plug in my G, and I'm going to have this go to a tonic in root position. That means that this one, being scaled with 2, it's going to step down to 1. Okay, given that we have a downward direction of our bass, we want now to place a note that for sure is going to take us up as the other outer voice. I'm going to put it up here, and that will be E. You see, that E, that is for sure going to take us up. Yeah, I'm just going to put it up here. It doesn't really matter because we don't have a context as such. Yeah. Hopefully that's clear. So the E scaled with 7 going to 8, that is going to create this contrary motion thing. Bass steps down, the soprano steps up. Okay, G is gone, and the E is also gone. So the 2 inner voices in this setting here is gone. We now have to place a C and a B flat. So one of them is going to be a C, the other one is going to be a B flat. We're going to write in close position. So if I place my B flat here, for instance, I can see that I can still push in a note in between, because in between these 2 notes, I can press a C. I can put a C there. So C is closer, that wins. And then by default, so this is now in the key of scale with 5, and we know that in an inner voice, we can just leave it. We don't need to resolve it, right? Just leave it there. And that means that our B flat goes in here. Bingo bango, not a problem. We can see scale with 4, going to 3, as we're used to 4. Oops, here goes down to 3. And if you're in the minor mode, it's just A flat. Just lower the 3rd scale degree in the minor mode. That's the resolution to 5, 4, 3, going to the 1 chord, the tonic chord in root position. That's the easy part. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this new trick we have, and for that one, I'm going to give you both the the bass and the soprano, so you'll learn to handle that one with with training wheels on. That's fine. It's still only LNM2. You know what I mean? All I'm interested in is that you all get these tools available and that you know how to use them. So I'm gonna erase most of this stuff here. Oh, this is still the same inversion. This is still a 5, 4, 3 chord. And now I'm going to have that going to a 1, 6 chord. That sounds like this, not the same key, but it doesn't really matter. That if I have my tonic chord here, I have my 5, 4, 3 chord here, and it can go here now. Because you can hear what we call parallel tenths, or if I were to, there'll be parallel thirds, but if I set that apart by an octave, so that those are very, very common sounds in tonal music. And they behave in the following way, and you're going to get the 2 outer voices here. G, I'm not going to put that down here actually. Why not? I'm going to go to A. I don't know if that's confusing. Maybe it is confusing. So I'm going to put it up an octave. So G, still scale degree 2. Because you can see scale degree 2. Here's scale degree 2, right? In the major mode, it sits a whole step away from scale degree 3 and also a whole step away from scale degree 1. That's why we can use it in the following way. I can make this go up to a first inversion tonic. And remember, you're going to get the outer voices here. So normally, when I have this going on, when I have the bass stepping up, I want to have a counteracting or balancing voice that makes the soprano go down. But in this case, I'm actually going to take my B flat. So it's the same procedure in the beginning, and you're going to get the B flat. You're also going to get the note that I'm going to show you now. Because here we have scale degree 4, this one here, actually going to 5. That's not a natural disposition of that scale degree. But you can do it if it creates parallel tenths between the outer voices. And that's what a lot of composers are doing. That's exactly why they're doing it. If the bass is moving it, then you're moving here. You can see that if I set these apart with just a third, as I just did on the guitar, you will see parallel thirds. That's all good. That's a great sound. That sounds very homogeneous, and composers have liked that a lot. Now I'm setting that third apart by an octave. So I have an interval of a 10 or 10th, whatever. And I understand an octave plus 3. So an octave is 8 plus 3. That should give it 11, right? But it doesn't, because in tonal theory, we start counting on 1. And that throws everything off. Yeah, it's just fussy math. It's really bad math, and we got to get used to that. But you will very soon get used to this. You'll get the outer voices here. And whichever key I choose, you'll get the outer voices. The rest is completely the same. I'm going to write, so in this chord, you can see the G is gone. That's the G. And the B flat is gone. So I don't need to worry about the 2 top notes. I need to place an E and a C. Yeah. So if I do this, you will still see that scale degree 7 is going to 8. And now I'm going to place a C, right? So C was the other note that I couldn't. That's going to remain. That's going to actually stabilize. Although all the other notes are kind of moving, you know, you will see that this scale degree 5 is what's going to stabilize the key. And the eagle-eyed among you may have spotted that here, it looks as if we have a 5th going to another 5th, parallel 5th, but we don't, because this one here is a tritone. Yeah. And that makes all the difference. Oops. This one here, if this had been going to, now you're parallel fifths, but here, that makes it legal. So there is some meaning to the madness, and it's not all fifths are created equally. Remember that you're going to get the bass and the soprano for this example in the exam, because this is the newest element, but we have basically covered all the things that we needed to cover this semester. All the inversions of the dominant 7 chord resolve into a major into a minor tonic in every single key imaginable. And then what have we really studied? We studied voice leading. We studied how to arrange for chorus, basically, because that in itself is a skill that takes years to develop. We've actually done that in 1 semester. So we've covered a lot of grounds. We've covered it in a different way, because the final inversion of the dominant 7 chord is along with the 5-6-5, is the easiest one. We started our sequence by studying the 5-6-5 chord, the first inversion of the dominant 7 chord, because it is easy as pie. And then it has, leading tone here and all the other notes. And then if you flip that around, you have the third inversion of the dominant 7 chord, and they behave exactly the same way. Everything moves by step, and scale degree 5 being in an inner voice like here, it's just, you don't need to resolve that one. But everything, remember that if we play scale degree 7 in the bass going up, we play scale degree 4 in the soprano going down. If we flip that around, so we have scale degree 4 here, we simply place scale degree 7 in the soprano to balance them out. They'll create contrary motion, and they are really a mirror image of one another. The 2 other dominant 7 chords, that will be the root position dominant 7 and this one here, are not the same. You can't compare them. And the root position dominant 7 chord, I know that all college programs start there. I don't think that's the best place to start, because this one as a model, the root position dominant 7 chord doesn't work very well because it resolves irregularly. It has an irregular resolution to a root position tonic chord, yes, but an incomplete tonic chord. And that tends to confuse students right there. And I understand that very well. I was one of those confused students. I never got that right. I just never, and I can see that the students I have who have learned to sort of go from here and then work their way backwards, saying that you must have a complete chord. They're really struggling because they've learned to stack here. They've learned it this way, that you have a root here and you have a third here and you have a fifth here. That's a triad. I understand that very well. What they don't seem to be, cognizant of is that this is also a triad, because it just looks like an interval. But if you have this, now it's a triad that, and let's say you have this in the key of F, then you have F, 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 and A. And that works really well in terms of how we're studying voice leading. Again, it's a great tool to have. Sometimes less is more, right? We just have to know which parts we can cut out. All right, let's do the last one. That also goes, by the way, to a 1/6, so I can leave this down here. So the final version of the C7 chord, C dominant 7 chord, would be sitting on a B flat note. We did the inversions before. You can get them back by just moving your cursor. And I'm going to put it down here. I could also put it up here, but I'm just going to put it down here. B flat goes to A, or A flat if you're in F minor. But it goes to, usually, I mean, we saw an example of the aberration or the exception to the rule or to the observation. But scale degree 4 usually goes to 3. In all but that case we just came out from, that is the case. So a downward bass produces our choice of an upward going soprano. Let's put it here, because last time we put it up here. There's no particular reason for that. We can easily put it down here. So now B flat is gone, E is also gone. So we have to put to place a C and a G. Well, G is above the E, and if I were to put it down here, we can see that creates a tremendous, first of all, a very, very low alto. Just go with close position, and that means the G writes itself right there. Okay, so now resolving this, this is C, that's scale degree 5. We know that when that's scale degree 7, we already resolved that one. Scale degree 5, inner voice, leave it alone. Just leave it there, scale degree 2, going to 1. So that ends up with a 1/6 chord. That's it. This is the whole, this is everything we've studied so far. That's all we want you to be able to handle at this point in the studies. And that's plenty, but it's not undoable because you're going to get the bass. And in the case of the, gotta get the right, the right name for this. This is 5/4/2. So that's one of the ones we did earlier on. If you've forgotten about that, it's because we did it earlier on in the semester, you know. But this one is not really causing any issues, I think. Again, here we'll see contrary motion, bass goes down, soprano goes up, and then scale degree 5 serves as the voice that's not moving, and everything else is moving sort of in contrary or opposite direction of one another. This is it. Tomorrow I'm going to send out your homework assignment. Next week we are going to close it out, and then we have some time to mop up whatever we need to mop up after that. Any questions? We good?
I'm going to try to do the homework that I missed.
Yeah, that's always good. A good idea.
Because I went to Mars and I was staring at it, and it was like, I don't know why I went to Mars when, you know, technically I was supposed to go to Venus, but I was really lost.
That's all good, Anna. That's all good. I mean, you know, remember that one of the things, I mean, it's not just about knocking out perfect and flawless data, you know, I mean, that's important, but it's not the only important thing. It's also important to participate, right? You know, it is a college course. So showing up is part of it. I mean, it's a very large part of it, because if you show up, and I've said this a number of times, not just to you guys, because you usually show up, you lot. I mean, the class here is a very good one. But I've said it that if you show up all the time, or as many times as you can possibly, you are going to get the information that you need, because I think we found a good way to sort of break down this so it's not inordinately hard. And we also found a sequence that seems to really work quite well, I have to say. So that things are progressing, and I can see from the midterm, but I can also see from the other years that people seem to end up in the right place. But moreover, I have to say that one of the things I've really enjoyed is that I can see my attendance is a lot better with the live stream version, because only one guy is commuting. That's me. Because I'm commuting either to the campus and doing live streaming there, or I can do live streaming from Jersey, where I'm right now, or from the city, or anywhere else for that matter. It doesn't really matter where I am, but the fact that only one person in the entire group is doing the commuting is a tremendous, I think, help for the rest of the group. To me, there's no doubt about that. Okay, so any questions about the material itself, or should we just take it, the homework's going out tomorrow, try your hands at it, use the YouTube option there for reviewing, and we'll see where we stand. Okay, all good? Thumbs up, fantastic. Thank you guys, you're awesome, and I'll see you on Monday, and I'll communicate with you tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye.